Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I want to know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about, let's talk about, yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host. And Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Wellness Wednesday. Wellness Wednesday, which is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to talk about whatever it is we want to chat about. And today, we are talking about suicide and the rise of suicide in the Black community. So, my guest is not a stranger to Conversations with Nicole. She actually is a returning guest, Miss Ashley Renee Fennell. And she is going to, well, we are going to chat about why there's been a spike in the deaths by suicide amongst African Americans. And so, this is a heavy topic, but one that I think is worthy of our exploration. So, before I bring Ashley on, I want to hear from you. This is an interactive live. We are on Facebook, YouTube, and on Roku via the Greater Works Network. And so, for my Facebook peeps and my YouTube folks, I want to hear from you. Let us know in the comments what city, what state are you tuning in from? What city and state are you tuning in from? I know we took a break on Monday, which was the 4th of July. I actually was traveling that day, had a great time this weekend with family up in the VA. And so we are back. July is Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. That's all we've been doing since November. So nothing really new here, but in terms of a theme. But hopefully you will get some enlightenment from this Wellness Wednesday and Mindset Monday are the focus is on mental health and wellness and connecting folks with clinicians. And so hopefully there'll be something here that is said that will benefit you or somebody that you know. So tag your friends, put their names in the comments, let them know they need to be here. Please like and share and comment. This is interactive. We want to hear from you. We will probably be asking you questions as we move along throughout the evening. So please do join in. So I see several folks chiming in. Self-love, my girl Yada, thanks for tuning in. She's right here in Tally. Brianna, Shantae in Tallahassee, thank you for being here. Jeanette Tullis, AARP featured an article on suicide. Hot topic. Yes, we actually try to cover suicide once a month. So thank you for being here, Jeanette. Cassandra, if my machine will work, in Aurora, Colorado. Thank you for tuning in. And Amber Dorsey in King George, VA. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. So, y'all, I'm gonna just share this little tidbit. When I tell you this topic is really very prevalent. I actually real time today experienced a young mother who had some suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, and myself and some other sisters were really trying to encourage her. And so Was looking for a perinatal counselor and wasn't quite sure. I know some outside of this area, outside of the state, but not really here in Tallahassee. But lo and behold, I would happen to go to the bathroom this afternoon, and there was a sign on the door for postpartum depression services, and so I was able to refer this sister to the sister that I was talking to, and the sister that provided that provides the service. She provides the services free of charge. She does not charge for that counseling. She has some years of experience in working with mothers, and her focus is Black and Brown mothers. And so I'm just so grateful that we were able to connect this sister with the sister that's offering these counseling services. So, y'all, this is so real. It is so, so real. And so, we got to, look out for one another, check on our people, and, try to get them the help that they need. So, Sister Yada said, yes, look at God. Indeed. Divine timing. Yes, absolutely, Brianna. Absolutely. So, this is, again, an important topic. So, let folks know they need to be on here. All right. So, as others are logging in, chiming in, we're going to move right along and introduce my guest. Miss Ashley Fennell holds an LPCC, licensed professional counselor candidate, and is currently a full-time psychotherapist. And let me correct this. She has a new business. Has her own private practice, and the name of it is Eclectic Evolution Counseling. And I'm gonna have her tell us a little bit about this name, Eclectic Evolution Counseling. So she holds her NCC certification and is a member of Chi Sigma Iota National Counseling Honor Society, the National Association of Black Counselors, and Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. She bases her theoretical orientation primarily in womanist, narrative, and existential theories, and often implements elements of person centered and cognitive behavioral therapy to assist her clients in increasing their self awareness while empowering them to take up full space in this world as their unapologetic and authentic selves. As she works with individuals and couples and aims to specifically work within the Black, LGBTQ, and military communities, as these communities are the most underserved and underrepresented in the area of mental health. Her future aspirations include becoming certified in both sex therapy and psychedelic assistant therapy. So help me welcome Miss Ashley. Yay!
Hello.
Yay! Welcome, Ashley. Welcome back, girl.
I know. Thank you for having me again.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Pretty well.
Good.
It's been a busy last 2 or 3 months moving and
Mhm.
visiting back home in New York. I'm from New York originally, Niagara Falls. So it's
Uh-huh.
been pretty busy. And starting the practice, that was a whole, I did that in a month. I got that together in a
Mhm.
month. So it was a lot
Listen,
going on.
you pulled that thing together. You hear me?
I didn't have no choice. I had my back against the wall.
So, y'all, Ashley was in Colorado and she has moved near Kansas City.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So,
Military family. So we are at Leavenworth.
but licensed in Colorado, doing telehealth and just making it work, boy. I'm telling you, making it do what it do.
Making it work with 4 kids in the house and a dog and a
Hmm.
husband.
Yes, 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 yes. So tell me about this name. I saw on IG you kind of described it. So give us the background behind the name of the new venture.
Okay, so the next funny thing, that was the hardest part. I was struggling to find. I was like, what am I gonna call a private practice? What do I call it? Am I freezing for you? I didn't know if I was freezing.
You look fine.
good. I didn't know what I was gonna call it, so I had reached out to different people, like, y'all help me think of a name. You know, if you know my personality, help me think of a name. I had called my cousin. I was like, Shug, you gotta help me think of a name, and she was like, I'm gonna pray about it. so funny enough, my husband came up with the name.
Really?
He gave me the name. He said, because we were sitting there talking, and he was like, well, why don't you use eclectic in the name? And I said, okay. I said, well, why? He said, because you use different theories, different styles. You know, you're very eclectic, so it would fit. So I said, okay, eclectic. And then we kept talking. He said, Eclectic Evolution Counseling Services. And I said, that's a lot to say. I said, I'm going to cut the services off.
Okay.
It still seems like a lot to say. So people have shortened it to like EEC, which is fine. But it's all about me, who I am, being eclectic, using so many different theories and using things that fit with the particular client. So it's no like cookie cutter, this is all I use. Like you have some therapists, there's nothing wrong with that. You have some therapists who they use a particular theory because that's the one that they find works well with everybody in general. I don't think that that's a good thing per se, just because, you know, you just never know, and certain things don't work well with the specific populations I want to work with. So eclectic because I use a lot of different theories and styles, and then evolution because I want to take people from a simpler state, or if they come to me and they're in a worse state, to a more complex, better, healthier state. So it's all about growth. Evolution is about growth, discovering your authentic self, and I hope to be able to help people do that.
Love it. Thank you for that explanation. So the last time you were on, we were talking about Blacks in the military.
Yes.
And one of the things that we talked about, even, you know, as it relates to just service persons, period, is the high rate of death by suicide.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talked recently, you know, we were talking about, you know, what can we talk about? And so in, you know, coming up with this, you know, my thought was how the rates have increased amongst African Americans. And so we're going to dive into that in just a moment. But before we do, because I have a clinician on, y'all know how I do, I got to read my disclaimer, which is that all topics past, present, and future on Conversations with Nicole are for informational purposes only. They are not to be used as a diagnosis for treatment or an answer to any personal issues related to the topic being discussed before, during, or after the program. So we still want you to get with a clinician in your state and get your checkup from the neck up. All right?
Yes.
All right. So, you know, before coming on tonight, I, you know, was doing a little Googling, ran across some articles, and, you know, some of the reasons, and these are recent articles, like in May, I ran across, some of the reasons are around social media, around stigma, accessibility of treatment, racism and discrimination. And then the one that I found to be interesting as well was frequent exposure to violence. Frequent exposure to violence. So those are things that I'm really interested in us diving into, but I want to kind of hear from you. Like, what's your thoughts around why the increase, there's a rise in death by suicide in Black communities?
So oddly enough, I did a little, I always do research before I have to do anything. Like this is one topic I've had to research a lot. So I definitely agree that the increase in, you know, us being exposed to violence, like recently, the shooting in Ohio, the young man who was killed, they shot at him 90 times. I saw so many of my friends post, please avoid watching the video. They're going to release the video. Do not watch. And that's because on the one side, we have this idea of the more you watch that type of violence, you become desensitized to it. But unfortunately, just because we seem desensitized on the outside, it doesn't mean that that's not going into our minds subconsciously. So that leads to anxiety and stress. We see things like that, and that's not normal to see such violence. So I definitely agree with that one. But another one that you didn't mention that I actually have been focusing on a lot is not necessarily the move of younger generations away from the church, but the move to more progressive faith and more progressive outlooks on faith, and church hurt. People who come out of the church and been severely hurt by the church. That's another factor for some people, because for the longest time, a big part of the African American community was our faith. And that is what really kept I believe, and I've read research that says that's one of the factors that kept our suicide rates lower, was our faith element. However, now with, the big deal about deconstructing your faith and finding your faith for yourself and studying and researching for yourself, that has led to some disconnect for some people. So then it's like, I don't have my faith to lean on as much.
And interesting that you would say that, because the young lady that I engaged with today, she identified as a person of faith. And she said she was surprised that her faith hadn't kept her. She said it's kept her, but it's like, it's just not doing it for her. And so, that really actually causes me to think about what people have been going through with the pandemic, right? Because the churches have been closed or they've been virtual. A lot of churches still aren't having in-person service. And so there's something to really be said about being in the presence of other like-minded people, other believers, you know what I'm saying? So that may be what she's missing, because, some of the other things that she kind of alluded to was what's going on in the world with the shootings at the schools, and because she has some other children. This is not her first child. So she's concerned about her child going to daycare. She's concerned about like all of the things that are going on in this world. And it's like causing like some serious anxiety for her.
Yeah, and see, that's always really touchy when we get to, well, I thought my faith would sustain me. Ideally, yes, our faith will sustain us in certain ways. It's a factor. We call that a protective factor. However, it goes hand in hand with taking care of yourself, both mentally and physically. People just pray about it or call out to God, and all those things are wonderful, but a full wellness picture means using that in tandem with other things, like seeing a mental health provider, or we go to the doctor for our checkup. We don't miss that just because we have faith. But it's this idea that if you have faith, then your mental health should be fine. Then that's just untrue, because a prayer is not going to help if you have a chemical imbalance. And those are the things that sometimes lead to clinical depression or severe anxiety. So if there's some type of imbalance, you can pray. And yes, I still believe in miracles, but you still need that additional help. And that's the part that's really tough for people. One of the reasons why I'm so glad that a lot of pastors that I know personally are being trained in counseling methods, like actual counseling methods that are more than just pastoral counseling. That's very important, because it's certain things. Faith can take us so far, but faith without works is dead. So you have to have that other aspect to help you through those times where you just feel like, okay, my faith ain't doing it. I got to talk to somebody. And it's for the longest time, it was always people would feel like you just don't have enough faith. And that's unfair, because that puts more strain on somebody. Like, oh God, my faith must be messed up because it's not working. No, that's not it. You just need further assistance.
So Jamil said Jesus plus therapy equals healing.
Exactly. They do not have to be mutually exclusive.
Absolutely. I say that all the time, that spirituality and medicine can coexist. All right. So, no, that was a really good point, about the spirituality piece, in terms of maybe we are more unchurched, or maybe that, the distance during the pandemic has caused now the new normal is bedside Baptist, and really bedside Baptist isn't really enough.
True. The pandemic came along with all its own issues.
Mhm.
When we were quarantined, people had to be at home for the first time, not being able to go out. And a lot of people had to really sit with themselves, which
Mhm.
we don't often in the world before the pandemic. A lot of people didn't take the time to sit with themselves and really
Mhm.
work on what they were feeling or dealing with internally. It was like, I don't have time to deal with that. I'm on the go. I got to go to work. I got to go here. I got to do this. I got the kids. So people didn't have time to really just stop each day and reflect on, what am I feeling today? What happened to me today? Or
Mhm.
even working on past issues that they may have like put in the back of their mind. It's that stuff manifests at one point or another. It's going to come out. So
Mhm.
when the pandemic hit, it was like, I'm in this house, whether by yourself or with other family or other people, you still had to confront yourself. And to confront yourself can be detrimental to some people.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, very, very true. Very, very true. So, one of the statistics that I read, and it didn't, well, it just said that the second leading cause of death among blacks ages 10 to 24 was death by suicide.
Mhm. Yep, and that number has skyrocketed because in 2003 it was the 16th leading cause. So now it's
Mm.
the second.
So, I mean, there's got to be, because 10 to 24, that's pretty young.
It is pretty young, and when you think about a 10-year-old, we often as adults wonder, what could you possibly have to worry about?
Mm-hmm.
These kids got a lot to worry about. They are, and this is why some parents don't want their kids on social media at all, but really it's unavoidable. If you're gonna send them to school, they're gonna be exposed to certain things.
Mm.
So ultimately, the kids are like, when we lived in Colorado, and I know other states do it too, but my kids' schools, they had lockdown drills, active shooter drills.
Mm.
A child through an active, you're telling this child, we have to practice in case somebody comes in here to shoot us.
Mm-hmm.
For an adult, that's heavy and can make us fearful and anxious. So how is a 10-year-old processing that? How is
Mm-hmm.
a 10-year-old processing the shooting in Uvalde, Texas? Because they're
Right.
seeing it. So they don't know how to process this. And it's adults who don't know how to process this.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional intelligence is not it hasn't always been the biggest deal. And now we want to focus more on it, like increase your emotional intelligence. But that's working on it now. That doesn't mean people already have it. So if you're a parent and you don't have it, your 10-year-old doesn't have it. So they don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah, that's deep. That is deep. Um, definitely. I'm always talking about coping skills and things that we do to help us manage during those tough times, those critical times when we are, battling with negative thoughts and just the things of this world. So that's very important. And so, encouraging folks not to wait until they get in crisis mode to connect with the clinician, but do it in advance of, right?
True, but also the difficulty there is we are in crisis mode in this country so much that we don't really know when crisis mode is anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much happening at one time. Like, you have the shooting of the young boy in Ohio, the Uvalde, Texas school shooting, the shooting that just happened on the 4th of July, the mass shooting in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
We have all these things that happen at once. So it's like, when are we ever out of crisis mode? I don't
Right.
know when to ask for help if I don't know when it's going from bad to worse.
Mm-hmm. No, very true. Very true. So we got a question on the floor. Fred said, I wonder what her thoughts are on the pharmaceutical industry in regards to prescription drugs that have cause and effects of suicide, depression, and death.
Okay. So
Mm.
okay. So I have very controversial within the mental health field thoughts on the pharmaceutical industry. I'm not against medications in any way. Some people absolutely do need them. We talking about certain disorders like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, borderline personality. Certain people, chemical imbalances really do require medications. However, I am way more holistic and natural when it comes to things. And for those particular medications whose side effects could be suicidal ideation or suicide or thoughts of death, I struggle with those, because my thinking is, if I'm already working with a client who has severe depression, that's not a medication I want them on. That might not benefit them. It may have benefits in one way, but it could also be very detrimental in another way. This is one of the reasons why, especially coming from Colorado, you have a lot of therapists now who are more so pro cannabis, because yes, it's a drug. This is a fight in the mental health community. You have some therapists, especially your addictions therapists, who are like, nope, it's a drug, not good for you. No, but it has medicinal benefits. And my thing is, what's the difference between medicinal marijuana and a client taking 2 different anti-anxiety meds and an antidepressant and something else? Those chemicals are made in a lab, and the pharmaceutical industry gets richer selling those. So of course they don't want to push something more natural. There are benefits to proper medicinal use of cannabis. So I have several clients who have medicinal marijuana cards, and they use it for anything from anxiety, depression to ADHD, and it has its uses, and it doesn't have those same type of detrimental side effects if used properly.
Okay. All right. So Fred, I hope that answered your question about Ashley's thoughts or take on the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah, I question some of those prescription drugs as well. And yes, when you hear the side effects and they talk about side effect being suicide and depression and that sort of thing, it's like, okay, so yeah, it's clearing up this one thing, but boy, I don't want to have to contend with that.
Right. And I'm not too big on big pharma, because yes, I know, like I said, certain situations absolutely need medication. However, at the end of the day, the pharmaceutical industry needs us to be sick, or else they would be out of business. So their job is not to cure us or heal us. Their job is to keep us needing medicine. So, I mean, you need a combination of both therapy and all sorts of faith, therapy, medication. It can't be a standalone, because then it becomes a crutch.
Right. So Amber is also agreeing that depending solely on medication is not the solution, but combined with therapy, having a more positive outcome.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So we got a response from Paroa. Says, I don't think it should be used as medication. It definitely works for many people, but it's a dependency that becomes a problem with all the substances. When you don't have it, it becomes a problem.
That's true. That's with any substance. That's with any prescription. People tend to think, oh, it's prescribed, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Plenty of people get hooked on Xanax. Plenty of people get hooked on Prozac. Plenty of people get hooked on these medications. So for me, this is just me. This is not me giving advice to anybody. But if I'm going to take something, I would rather take something that is more natural than more manufactured. We know that these medications that Big Pharma put on the market are more manufactured at the end of the day. So that's why you have so many possible side effects. But you can become addicted, or any substance can become a problem. But I will always side with the more holistic or more natural type of medications.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you for sharing that. All right. So we've talked around a little bit of the violence, social media, some faith. I guess the more traditional school of thought, especially in the Black community, is the stigma, right? Of being thought of as crazy, thought of as weak, don't want to be vulnerable. What happens in my house or what happens in this house stays in this house, right?
Yes.
All of those things, right? That's another one of the reasons or the factors around the increase in suicide amongst Black folks.
Absolutely. Ironically enough, all of the Black clients that I've had ever since I started way back doing my internship, all of the Black clients that I've had, one of the first things they said to me is, this is my first time in counseling, and the only reason I decided to come is because I saw your profile. I saw a Black woman, and I was like, okay, I'll go. So that's interesting, because it's like, okay, that just means more of us need to be in the field. More of us need to be represented. We are still not represented enough, but we out here. We out here now. We got a couple on the thread with us. Amber is in the field. The Little Walkers, I think that's what she under. That's my cousin Rashonda. She's
okay.
So we're out here, but at the end of the day, our community struggles with trust when it comes to the medical and mental health field. And rightly so. We have the history in this country when it comes to mental health, and the medical field for us is a very, very rough one. So we struggle with trusting providers. Like they might diagnose me incorrectly just because I'm Black. Or they're not going to understand this white therapist is not going to understand my issues or understand the way I talk. So that's one of the biggest factors that keep us from therapy in a lot of ways, along with that stigma that we've grown to know about. Oh, you don't go to therapy unless you're crazy. You don't tell anybody your business. That's always been a problem for me. The whole idea of what happens in this house stays in this house, because that is detrimental to our psyche. Those type of secrets, those type of family secrets are what push people over the edge, because you hold on to it for so long that now you don't know why you are acting out in the way you are. But that's a part of that manifestation of what you have been holding on to for so long. So that stigma is something that I know myself and so many other therapists, Black therapists that I know, are really working hard to finally break. Like, it's okay. We have a lot of Black celebrity, Taraji, she talks about mental health. Charlemagne is on the Breakfast Club. He always talks about going to therapy, and it's great to see Black men in those positions telling other Black men, go to therapy. It's okay. Because I think that will lessen the stigma, just because in our society, depending on who tells you, you're more apt to try something. That's just the society we live in. If you see a strong Black man that you have liked as an actor or entertainer say it's okay, you might feel a little bit better about it.
Let me pause real quick here for those of you who are just joining us. I have Ashley Fennell. She is Miss Eclectic Evolution Counseling, new private practice. And we are talking around suicide and the rise in death by suicide in the African American community. And so, is it Walker Littles?
Yep.
Says African Americans are also deathly afraid of diagnosis, and that's correct diagnosis as well as incorrect. So is that sort of like you naming the thing?
It is you naming the thing, but the problem is not only African Americans, but also just coming from I think I mentioned this when I did the show about the military. That diagnosis, depending on what it is, could have effects on other parts of your life, like your job.
So in terms of your medical history, even though, but isn't that supposed to be private?
It is. There's caveats to that, though. For example, if you come to me and I think you are suicidal, there are exceptions to confidentiality. Now, the diagnosis is supposed to be confidential, but there are certain jobs that require to know about certain diagnoses. For example, let's say somebody wants to be a pilot. You probably can't be a pilot if you are highly anxious, if you are diagnosed with anxiety. So those type of jobs can find out that information, because it's the safety of the job that comes into play. So African Americans being afraid of incorrect diagnosis, that's true, because the one thing people always ask me, what does this diagnosis mean and how will it affect me in other areas of my life? So they are afraid of that. We want to be able to name it so we can treat it. But another thing that bothers me in this field is that people can't just come to therapy just because they want to maintain good mental health. With insurance, I have to give you a diagnosis or your insurance won't cover it. So there are billable diagnoses and then there are unbillable. For example, for my couples usually most of the things are unbillable. These are they're called Z codes and they're unbillable. So with a couple, you have to have one identified client and that client has to carry the diagnosis. So you're seeing a couple, but one of them has to carry the diagnosis for insurance to cover it. So to me, it's very bothersome because now you're telling people who may want to just talk to somebody. They may not have an actual diagnosis. They just want to talk to somebody. But you're telling them, we won't cover you if nothing is wrong with you. But everything that's wrong is not always diagnosable.
Right. So I have chatted with clinicians that have told me that sometimes their clients need more counseling sessions than their insurance will allow without them giving a diagnosis. And the diagnosis is basically more severe than what's actually going on with them. You know what I'm saying? In order to get the number of sessions that they really could benefit from.
Yeah, I've had, it's interesting because even when I was in school, we took a diagnostic class, of course, to learn about the different diagnoses. And one of the diagnoses that I hear a lot of therapists say that they use is adjustment disorder. Adjustment disorder is billable, but it's not one of the heavy ones. It's like anybody can have an adjustment disorder. We just moved here from Colorado. I could have an adjustment disorder because I'm adjusting to a new environment. So that's one of the ones that's not as heavy, but it will allow for you to have more sessions because it can be listed as chronic adjustment disorder. So that's one of the ones that I hear a lot of therapists use. But most people, I will say, at least most people that I see, do fall under at least generalized anxiety disorder. I mean, like I said, living in crisis mode all the time, so everybody has some anxiety.
Right. So I would say there needs to be some more advocacy, especially on the insurance provider side, where they are allowing for more sessions, or even on the employer side. I mean, I know, especially during the pandemic, there were some employers that were providing, a certain number of counseling sessions for their employees. So, under their EAP or employee assistance program. So, definitely there needs to be some advocacy around that, because people need it.
They do.
People need it. So we had a couple of questions I want to definitely bring up. Amber had a comment. She said, absolutely, I've questioned so much that I've learned as a child from my family, especially when it comes to mental health. It really is difficult to unlearn some of those things. And unfortunately, a lot of us aren't aware enough to do so. Yes, Amber, that is true. All right. So Vanessa says, is mental health more important than physical health?
Now, everybody gonna think I'm being biased because I'm gonna say yes, but the reason I'm gonna say yes is because mental issues can literally cause physical issues. Stress can cause physical problems. Depression can cause physical problems. So I would say taking care of your mental health is more important because we have all types of psychosomatic physical problems that occur when we are stressed, anxious, depressed. So yeah, I would say so. A lot of times when people can get their mental health in check, they see a reduction in physical symptoms. And a lot of symptoms that we don't even pay attention to are because of mental issues, like that constant headache that you have or constant digestion issues, stomach issues. There might be something going on mentally that you haven't dealt with. And that's your body's way of saying, hey, it's not just this physical. You got to work on some other stuff.
Right. No doubt. All right. So Trisha said, are there ways for a therapist to know when a person really needs help or is just trying to be diagnosed to receive financial benefit?
Yes, there are ways. And this is one of the reasons with my practice. Well, it's two reasons why I can't accept insurance right now. I can't accept insurance because I have an independent supervisor. So I'm collecting clinical hours. And then also for billing and coding purposes, insurance is just a little bit much. So I was like, I don't even want to deal with that right now. But when you deal with therapists who take insurance, you do run that risk of people thinking, oh, it's just about the money. It's just about the financial gain. And for some that might be, but most therapists I know really got in this field because they wanted to help people. So it's not just about giving you a diagnosis so we can make sure we get paid, especially on the self-pay end, because with self-pay, I don't have to diagnose at all. And I don't have to put a diagnosis on anything because I'm self-pay. So I don't have to worry about insurance covering because it's self-pay.
Right.
So I provide sliding scales. The one thing I've always said is money is not my motivating factor in this field for me. I always plan to provide sliding scales when I get to a place where I'm really good with my practice. I plan to do pro bono clients just because I want to be able to help people. That is my main. And you have a lot of therapists who are on that same path. They really just want to help people. I mean, yes, we need to survive too. We have families to take care of and bills. But even me looking at some of the pricing and some of the things in the mental health field, I'm like, that's ridiculous. That's why everybody can't get care, because of this. It's too much. It's too much. You have to be willing to help people if that's what you got into this field for.
Absolutely. So Shantavia, who is also a clinician here in Tallahassee, said yes, because you have to take care of your mental to take care of your physical.
Absolutely.
Indeed. And then Fred said, Miss Ashley, do you believe or think that most and or all mental health conditions are diseases? And if so, curable or not?
I do not like the term diseases. I don't like that term. That's very medical and clinical. It's not a disease. I tell you all the time, you are not your diagnosis. Just because you have a diagnosis, that does not mean that's who you are, and it does not excuse behaviors. Having a certain diagnosis does not excuse behaviors, because there is help. You can get help, even if it's just from your primary physician. There are things you could do. So I don't like the term diseases. I prefer disorder or mental health issue, because issues can be taken care of. You can fix an issue. As far as them being curable, curable that's a loaded term. If you have somebody who is diagnosed, let's say schizophrenic, that's not going to go away. Most things are not going to go away. You just learn how to manage them. So if you have major depression, you likely will always have major depression, but you will learn how to manage it. So it's not that we say we can cure anything. We can show you how to manage it. And there are ways to manage it without medication for certain diagnoses. For others, you will need medication, but I don't necessarily believe in calling it diseases, or that we should use the term curable.
Okay. All right. Get us right, Ashley. All right. So Cheryl wants to know, what steps can you take to find a good therapist?
Ooh, okay. Well, first you want to ask yourself, what type of therapist are you looking for? And that's be going from the surface level to deeper. Do you want a Black therapist? Most Black people do want a Black therapist. Do you want a male or female therapist? Do you want somebody who implements spirituality into their therapy? You have Christian therapists, you have other spiritual therapists. Do you want somebody that works on specific issues? Like, what is your issue? Do you want the therapist to specialize in that issue? I always tell people, first place you go check is Psychology Today, because you can filter out, like you can put in your state, you can put in African American, and it'll give you all the African American therapists in your state. You can put in your insurance, and it'll give you all the ones who take your insurance. So Psychology Today is a really good resource that I like to tell people to use. You can also ask just people in your community, if doctors in your community, do they have a referral list? But specifically, when you are really serious about starting therapy, you want to go into it with an open mindset, because you may not fit well with that first therapist you see. That does not mean every therapist is going to be a bad fit. That just means that one is. So I always tell people, have at least 3 to 5 therapists on your list. Go to that first one at least twice to see if it's a fit. After that second session, if it's not, go to the next one on the list until you find that fit for you. And you'll know, innately, you'll know when you found the fit.
Mm-hmm. No, agreed. We got Isis J on here. She said she just finished her last session. Hey, Isis.
Hey,
Yeah. So Isis is the plug. She's how I even got connected with Ashley. So thank you so much. All right, so we got a couple of questions. Let's see. Hassan, who's in Pensacola, said, do they have assistance that provides mental health for youth who are underprivileged?
Yes, most states and cities do provide those services.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what state you're in, you can. I bet if I were to Google right now, I could find something here where I'm in Kansas or back in Colorado. I know there were different places in Colorado. You want to look for nonprofit type of organizations or places that offer like 3 to 5 or 5 to 7 free sessions for underrepresented populations. If you're affiliated with the military in any way, you can go through. Oh gosh, my cousin Rashonda is on here. She probably knows exactly what it's called, but it's a program you can go through in the military where you basically get sessions. So there's usually some type of organization in all communities that offers some type of therapy to youth, underprivileged youth.
So, Hassan, I will also suggest checking with the municipality, so City of Pensacola or Escambia County, to see if they offer some services, as well as some of the social service programs. Like, so for instance, we have here 211 Big Ben, and you just dial 211 and they can give you a list of, they actually serve as a clearinghouse of resources in the community. So see if there's something like that in Pensacola that you can tap into.
Also check with the military one source. I knew she would remember.
Okay. All right.
Also check with the schools in the area. Schools also usually have resources, especially now. Schools will be able to give you resources for even the school counselor. Most schools have a school counselor on staff. I know funny thing, my kids talked to their school counselor all the time last year. So yep. Oh, and that one that Amber just put up.
So NAMI.org. There's a NAMI chapter here in Tallahassee, but NAMI is nationwide. And although they don't provide counseling, they do provide resources for family members, friends, people who have loved ones that are contending with a mental illness. All right. So Trisha wants to know, what recommendations do you have for family members who are trying to assist a family member who has mental instability?
So one thing I always suggest for family members who are trying to help other family members, you need therapy too. The family members need help. So you have to process things as well. So you need your own help, especially depending on what you're dealing with that other family member. But also just be a support. We don't want to enable, especially negative behaviors, but you want to be a support. And if we're talking directly about a family member who might be suicidal, you want to be there for them. You want to make sure that they know resources that they can reach out to if they can't reach somebody in the family. But you don't want to judge. That's one of the biggest things. You do not want to show judgment at all. This is why people are so afraid to talk, because they're like, I'm gonna be judged for this, or people are gonna judge me or think that I'm crazy. You do not want to show judgment at all. You just want to love on your family member. Don't enable, don't show judgment, show them support and love.
Again, great points. Anything else that we want to, I guess, highlight, as it relates to loved ones or friends that we may encounter that may have suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideations, and are talking about, that they don't want to be here anymore, and things of that nature? So Jamil said judgment shoves people into isolation for sure. Hmm. All right. Oh, Vanessa said, since we're talking about family, how does genetics play a role in depression?
Okay, so it is something that's been heavily researched, and there are genetic ties. That was actually something that I was going to bring up as far as specifically African Americans and just our history in America. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of post-traumatic slave syndrome. This is getting
Mm.
passed down through our DNA from previous generations. The suffering that we dealt with and the discrimination. So innately, are we're resilient to an extent, but we also have this trauma. It is embedded in our DNA. So it is genetic in that sense. That it can be genetic. There are ways for you to. This is why I always tell people try to find out as much about your family history as possible, as far as their medical history. Try to find out about that. You know, in Black families, we always have, oh, that's just your crazy uncle. So find out what was really wrong with him. Find out what his doctors may have said was going on, if it's possible. Find out about your parents. If you still have your parents here with you, find out, like, were you ever really sad? Did you ever go through situations where you didn't feel like you knew how to cope with it? Talk to the people in your family about that, because there are genetic elements to depression.
Okay. And so, Walker Little's cousin is chiming in intergenerational trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and also that people label suicide as a selfish act, and that's not always the case.
Yes,
And so,
that
yeah,
just
let's flush that out a little more, because I think that now, especially, look, we even have termed it differently now. It's death by suicide as opposed to committing suicide, because the thought of committing, or the I guess the sound of committing, is as if you committed a crime,
yes,
right? And so, this people thinking that this is the best option for them.
yeah. So yeah, the like I said, word usage is so important. We don't even, in the mental health field now, most of us don't even say committed suicide. We'll say
Mhm.
completed a suicide, because committed, that's when it used to be considered self-murder. You are
Mhm.
murdering yourself, which is a crime. Um, but yes, people view suicide as such a selfish act, but they don't. I like to tell people, you have to separate yourself from that person's suicidal act, because one, it's not a selfish act. You have to think to yourself, their intention was not to hurt you or anyone else. Their intention was to stop their own suffering. And that's the only way they knew how. And we look at it like, well, they should have reached out for help, or there's other ways. And we don't know. Even in the field, we don't know what actually causes somebody to snap in that moment and go that route. And for me, I'm a little bit, when it comes to the topic of suicide, I'm a little bit controversial, because on the one hand, I don't want anybody to commit suicide. Well, I don't want to say complete a suicide or attempt it, but on the other hand, I want people to have autonomy. That's your choice. It's still a choice. It's not the choice that we would want you to make, but it's still your choice, and I can't take away your autonomy to make that choice. Um, I've heard people in the field say that it is the final coping mechanism. It's your final coping mechanism. You've tried everything else to deal with this suffering and this pain, and this is the final thing that'll take it away. And for a lot of us to hear that, it's like, that's so unfair. You don't have the right to do that. Well, if we talk about autonomy, you have the right. We live in a society now where rights are up in the air, especially for women. You can't tell somebody they have the right to do one thing with their body, but not another. So it's one of those touchy subjects where people kind of turn it onto themselves when a loved one commits suicide, but it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with how much suffering they were dealing with. It's not a selfish act. It's an act saying, I don't know what else to do, and I'm in pain. And this is how I stop that pain in this moment.
Mhm. So Trisha said, I have often believed when it is said it is a selfish act, it is anger and hurt speaking.
Yes, absolutely. When somebody you love commits suicide, it is perfectly okay for you to feel the things you feel. I don't want to take that away from anybody. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to be hurt. That's a part of grief.
Right.
But after you process it, and if you go, especially if you do some grief work, which I suggest for anybody who's grieving any type of loss, you start to realize it had nothing to do with me. It wasn't them trying to hurt me or them being selfish. It's them really trying to help themselves in the only way they thought they could in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, other resources. I know we talked about NAMI. I think somebody earlier put in information about the Steve Fund and let's see. So 988, which is actually supposed to be rolling out in July, which is going to take it's going to take the place of the suicide hotline. So that's supposed to be coming out very, very soon. So be on the lookout for that. I think they're rolling it out across the country. And I'm not sure how they're doing it, regionally or what have you, but, just want you to be aware of that. And then that 741-741 text is to the crisis text line. And so there are folks that are available there 24/7 that can assist.
Yeah, and that's 741-741. Yeah, that's a crisis text line. If you text home to that number, or Steve, then someone will get right back to you. You also have the suicide prevention lifeline phone number, which is 1-800-273-TALK. And then also specifically for the LGBTQ community, because we are seeing when it comes to intersection, and it comes to that intersection of being African American and a part of LGBTQ, suicide numbers increase even more. So that one of the great resources for that is the Trevor Project. You can go to trevorproject.org. That is a really good resource.
Okay, I'll put that one in there as well.
It's specifically for LGBTQ youth. So
okay. .org, you said?
The trevorproject.org.
All right, got it. All right. Well, this has been, I think, a meaningful conversation. If this has been helpful to you in some way, if you would show us in the comments with a thumbs up or raise hand or some hearts or something. Let us know in the comments if this has been beneficial and helpful to you, because we want to know. We gotta definitely, keep our ears and eyes open for loved ones, and not just not only loved ones, but people in the community that are, may be suffering and, considering death by suicide. And so there are a number of resources out there. Also know that talking about suicide to someone does not,
that is so important.
Plant the seed or what have you.
It does not. That is so important. Talking about it does not make it more likely to happen. And there's one other thing I want to mention before we got off. One of the myths when it comes to the Black community in particular, the idea that Black people don't commit suicide. Black people don't do that. We weren't doing that until XYZ or until now. That is false. I want to make sure to be very clear that is false. We have always had lower rates, but it has always existed. And we can go all the way back to slavery. At the end of the day, when you hear about slaves who jumped over ships to avoid being put in bondage, yes, they would rather complete that than be in bondage, but that is still suicide. They would rather do that. And we have several, I was researching it. There are so many interviews and letters left behind from slavery times of slaves committing suicide on plantations.
Mm-hmm.
So it has always been there. We have just had lower numbers up until now.
Yeah.
It's far more prevalent now than it has probably ever been in our communities. And we need to really pay attention. Starting as young as age 8, 9, and 10, we need to start paying attention.
Yeah, so talk to your young people, have conversations with them, find out what's going on in their thoughts, and get them some help. If you're not capable of holding space for them, then find somebody that can. Somebody in the pediatric behavioral health space, for the young people especially. All right. So, Ashley, you want to tell folks how they can connect with you?
Sure. So I have a business Instagram page, Eclectic Evolution Counseling. You can just search that and it should pop right on up. I can also be reached by email. That would be afennell@eclecticevolutioncounseling.org. And then my business phone number, I can be reached on my business phone by text, or you can call, and that is 720-580-1340.
Okay.
So those are 3 ways to reach me about anything therapy.
All right. So
Counseling.org.
Okay. See, I was supposed to have all this ready. Let's get it together. .org. And on IG. So follow her on IG. Sure. She's going to have some good stuff to put out there and keep you thinking. Right?
Absolutely.
Now, don't you have something else coming up?
Yes, I do have something else coming up. Thank you for reminding me. I didn't forget, but I was going to wait till the end. So I am currently in the process of starting a podcast with a group of phenomenal Black women. It is 4 of us. And we will be starting our own podcast called the Clinical Cookout. So it's going to be 4 of us on the podcast. We are going to keep it real, and it'll be fun and educational at the same time. We will talk all things mental health. We're going to have live shows so that people can interact with us. And we are planning to have our first show in August. So hopefully we get that up and running and can start in August. It is myself, Rashonda Walker. She is my cousin. She's on here tonight.
Hey, cousin.
She is in the process of getting her PsyD. She'll be finished in December, I believe. So she'll be a doctor. And then Amber Dorsey, she is also one of the hosts of the Clinical Cookout. She is a doctor now. She just got her doctorate. And then also Keisha. Rashonda, tell me Keisha's last name because I just forgot it.
It's all good. It's all love. It's all love.
One of our hosts.
Yes. All right, good deal. So folks are chiming in just about, the show, saying thank you and just giving us some love. So we appreciate it. We do. Let's see. So Constance is on here. Jamil, great conversation tonight, ladies. Nicole, thank you for keeping the conversation around mental health going. My pleasure. I appreciate it. So for those of you who are new to the platform, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribing and supporting, and we need all the support we can get. And share this with a friend. Share this with a loved one. Let them know. Listen, we need to bring those numbers down. And we do that by having these types of conversations. So let's keep the conversation going, and let's support each other, right? We all we got, and so we need to be supporting one another. So thank you all. I appreciate you. all of the comments, all of the love. We couldn't do this without you. So Ashley, I appreciate you for being on here and sharing your knowledge and your expertise, and all the best to you with the new venture and the podcast coming up. And we're gonna be, tuning in and see what y'all have going on.
Thank you so much. Just keep in mind, it's the clinical cookout, y'all. So when we drop it, I'm gonna make sure to send it to Nicole so she can put it on her page too. So
Absolutely. Well, y'all have a great rest of the evening, a wonderful weekend, and we will see y'all next week on Conversations with Nicole. Peace.